All right, well, thanks for joining us here today. And after our series on Jeremiah, I wanted to get into something in the New Testament, give us a bit of a different feel and a different flavor. And I came across this story that you're probably somewhat familiar with. It's this story where Jesus casts a demon out of a man, the demon goes into the pigs, and the pigs go run off the cliff to their death. And I don't know about you, but when I read that story, I feel like, well, that's not a very relatable story for a lot of people. I don't think we go around the world seeing people possessed with demons. We hardly have any really familiarity with pigs in our life. So it's never been a story I've focused a whole lot on. But when I took a look at it this week and I started kind of picking out some of the details, I thought, wow, there's a lot more in the story that makes it relatable than what I had really realized. So that's what we're going to do this week. We're going to kind of go through this story. We're just going to get basically right into the story, read it, and then go through it and see what this is all about. Because I think when you start to see how how he kind of has his highs and lows, and that he's not really a bad guy. He's just someone who's stuck in this repeating pattern. You get our theme for today, repeating patterns. That he's much more relatable than you perhaps first realize. So here we go. This is from Mark chapter 5. It's in your order of service if you wish to follow along. They came to the other side of the sea, to the country of the Gadarenes. And just pause right there for a moment for a geography lesson. This country is on the other side of the Jordan. And this is important to realize this is not in the Holy Land, and we'll come back to that at the end. But just kind of have that as a seed in your head. And when he, Jesus, had come out of the boat, immediately there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit, who had his dwelling among the tombs, and no one could bind him, not even with chains, because he had often been bound with chains and shackles. The chains had been pulled apart by him, and the shackles broken in pieces. Neither could anyone tame him. And always, night and day, he was in the mountains and in the tombs, crying out and cutting himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from afar, he ran and worshipped him. And he cried out with a loud voice and said, "What have I to do with you, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I implore you, by God, that you do not torment me." For Jesus said to him, "Come out of the man, unclean spirit." And then he asked him, "What is your name?" And he answered, saying, "My name is Legion, for we are many." Also he begged him earnestly that he would not send them out of the country. Now a large herd of swine was feeding there near the mountains. So all the demons begged him, saying, "Send us to the swine, that we may enter them." And at once Jesus gave them permission. Then the unclean spirits went out and entered the swine. There were about 2,000. It's a lot of pigs. And the herd ran violently down the steep place into the sea and drowned in the sea. So those who fed the swine fled, and they told it in the city and in the country. And they went out to see what it was that had happened. Then they came to Jesus and saw the one who had been demon-possessed and had the legion, sitting clothed and in his right mind. And they were afraid. And those who saw it told them how it happened to him who had been demon-possessed and about the swine. Then they began to plead with him to depart from their region. And when he got into the boat, he who had been demon-possessed begged him that he might go with him. However, Jesus did not permit him, but said to him, "Go home to your friends and tell them what great things the Lord has done for you, and how he had compassion on you." And he departed, and he began to proclaim in Decapolis all that Jesus had done for him, and all marveled. So, we know the Lord performed a lot of miracles in his time, and this story, we note that it starts on the other side of the Jordan. And spiritually, this is a picture of a man who has been raised outside of instruction from the Word. So the Holy Land is instruction from the Word and the Lord. Outside it is not. But while possession back then was, a more common event than it is today, we know spirits are with us then as they are now. But key to this guy's story is that even though he's demon possessed, when he sees Jesus, he goes running to him. So we start to see that, this guy he's not evil. He's going to worship the Lord and says, help me. Help me. He needs his spiritual freedom restored because he's living in the mountains and also in the tombs. So he's got this kind of dual life going on where, he's got these times of high resolve. His best self comes shining through and he's up in the mountains and he's like, you know what? I am going to stop being this way. But eventually, he's back in the tombs. So he's lived in both ends of it, and those tombs, they signify something bad. They signify, because of the dead bodies and the bones in them, they signify things that are unclean, that are hellish, that are false. And so the people of the city tried to bind this guy with chains, but he breaks the chains. Think about this on a natural level. That's something's really going on there. He's breaking the chains and the shackles. And sometimes we try really hard to control our passions. And we try to live an orderly life like other people. But these chains, these evils just come out again and we break the binds that the world's putting on us. So this guy, he's demon possessed and he goes on. He lives unhappy. And what's he doing? He's condemning himself. He's cutting himself with stones. So think about that. He's not, the stones, that's truth. So he's not living up to his own standards. And this is the misery of this guy's life. Yep, I've got the resolve up in the mountains, but I keep coming back to these tombs and boom! Those natural desires, those base level desires, passions, whatever you want to call it, they just come out. And then he goes to the cycle, the repeating pattern of, I did it again. I did it again. So he cuts himself with the stones. That's something that I can relate to. I can think of how many times that I've said to myself, I'm not going to do this anymore. And then something happens and I do that again. We talk about it at Holy Supper. How many times do we come to Holy Supper with the exact same thing that we repented on last time we were at Holy Supper? We just seem to have this repeating pattern over and over again. I'm going to stop doing, but here I am again. It's 3 months later. I'm at Holy Supper, and I'm trying to, Lord, please help me stop doing this. That's this guy. That's this guy. He's not living up to his own standards. So when he finally recognizes the Lord and comes to him for help, the Lord commands the evil spirits to come out of him, and he's found by the people sitting, clothed, and in his right mind. And if we sincerely wish for the Lord to cure us of our vices and look to him to help, he will cast them out for us. And so this picture of sitting is a settled condition. It's a state of security and peace. Clothing, we recognize from other places in the word, clothing is like the external truths, the things that we present in life. So he's got clothing on. And in his right mind, of course, he's got his spiritual freedom back. So now he can choose to do the right thing. It's no longer this overrun by his passions. He's no longer spiritually insane, which is being controlled by your desires. So we add in what the Lord tells us about, hell and demons, and he says, devils are the kind of people who have allowed themselves to be controlled by their physical appetites, by their physical desires, and they're at a point where they believe that the only satisfaction in life comes from physical delight. The picture of heaven we were just showing the kids is no, happiness comes from other sources. It's a higher source than just being satisfied physically. But the devils seem to think that, no, physical stuff is all that matters. So they believe that when they come out of the body, that their satisfaction, their life is taken away. That's why they ask to be cast into the pigs. Well, pigs don't have a good representation, as you might imagine. They represent that kind of low, selfish, basic kind of living. And in the end, because they're evil, they destroy the very satisfaction that they're indulging in. I mean, think about it just in very simple terms. If you have a food that you like to eat, and all you do is eat that same food every day, eventually it stops being fun. We've had the experience, of going back to the U.S., and we go back for 2 weeks, and we say, we're going to eat all those restaurants that we've missed for the last year or two. And we eat, and about 4 or 5 days into it, I said to Jen, this isn't fun anymore. This isn't fun anymore because we are perpetually stuffed and we're not enjoying this. So the picture of the whole herd of pigs running into the sea is that picture, is given as a warning so that we see that evil has this kind of an end to it, where the delight that started out with is just taken away. It's all gone. So, I don't know about you, but I think that this is a much more relatable story than we realize at first pass. Key to it, I think, though, is that this guy is dwelling outside the Holy Land. He's dwelling in these tombs. That's what it says. His dwelling is in the tombs. He goes to the mountains, but he's also coming back to these tombs. And if you look at, say, modern psychology and modern mental health studies, they talk a lot about addiction in terms of environment and how much environment matters. That addicts have this thing where they just go back to a place and it triggers them. They've done all sorts of experiments on rats and mice, and they did this one I found where they put these rats and mice in a cage and they have these two levers. One's for food and one's for water. And the rats learn to know which one's which and they get what they want. Well, then they introduce a drug, cocaine, speed, some sort of, a high-inducing drug. And they put that lever on there too. And the rats, well, they like this drug. We'll tap that lever. And they tap that lever to the extent that they will not tap the food and the water levers. All they care about is getting high. So they just tap, 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 tap. And those other two, they start to be emaciated, they get sick, they get malnourished because they don't eat. It all goes bad for them. But they take these same addicted rats and mice and they put them in another cage, in another place, where there's only the two levers for food and water, and they're totally fine. They exhibit no desires for the drugs. Everything goes around normally. Environment is changed, and they have changed. Put them back, another one, bang. They're addicted, high rats all the time. And it's illustration that while us humans are more complex than them, that the same pattern happens, that our environment matters. That when we go to a certain place, it will trigger certain things. You go to work, and you get called in the boss's office, and the boss always yells and makes you feel stupid. You're going to go in that office, and you're going to have a trigger of feeling stupid even before you get there. You go to school, you have a bad experience there. Well, that environment's going to trigger something bad for you. Same kind of thing. So when I see that in the story that this guy, he goes to those tombs and that's where his passions break out, I think, yep, there's something there. Science tells us that, these brain chemicals happen in these certain places, and okay, there's some truth there. But I think what the writings tell us is that there's something more to it. Because when you go into a cemetery and you have that creepy feeling, it's not just brain chemistry. There's something more going on. Take a look at Apocalypse Explained, number 659. It is to be known that falsities and evils of every kind correspond to unclean and loathsome things in the natural world, and the more direful falsities and evils to things pertaining to dead bodies and to fetid, excrementatious things, and the milder falsities and evils to things pertaining to swamps. Consequently, the dwelling places in the hells of those who are in such falsities and evils appear like pits and sepulchres. And, if you will believe it, now this is his little warning here, these things are about to get weird. If you believe it, such evil genii and spirits also have their abode in the sepulchres, privies, and swamps that are in our world, although they do not know it. This is so because they correspond, and the things that correspond conjoin. All right, so this is a big one. You walk into that swamp, that sepulcher, that tomb, that graveyard, and you feel creepy. He says, man, that's not by accident. That's because there's a correspondence there, and it's drawing in these evil spirits. It's real. The same conclusion may be drawn from this, that those who have been assassins and poisoners, and to those who have perceived delight in violating women, there is nothing more delightful than the odor of a corpse. And to those who have been eaten up with the love of ruling, and to those who have taken delight in adulteries and no delight in marriages, there is nothing more delightful than the odor of excrement. And to those who have confirmed themselves in falsities and have extinguished themselves the affection of truth, there is nothing more delightful than the odor of a swamp and of urinous places. This is why the hells in which they dwell appear according to the corresponding delights, some like pits and some like sepulchres. It's not a very nice picture. Not a very nice picture of what this guy was involved in. But despite being involved in these things, he'd pull himself out to the mountains and he'd go to the Lord, Lord, help me. Help me. I don't want to be like this. And when he does it, he's mad at himself. He's cutting himself with his stones, saying, this is not the standards I've set for my life. At the end of the story, Jesus says, go home. Go home back to Decapolis. Now, I looked really hard to figure out what the correspondence of Decapolis was. But there is no mention anywhere in the writings of Decapolis. But what I learned is that, well, Deca, 10 cities. Decapolis is 10 cities that exist on the other side of the Jordan, on the non-holy side of the Jordan. And these 10 cities are part of the Greco-Roman Empire, and one of them is the city of Philadelphia. The city of Philadelphia is what appears in the book of Revelation in the letters to the churches. So the last little reading from your order of service is from Revelation 3 about the church of Philadelphia. And listen to what he says here, and I think about this guy, and I think maybe we have a connection here. He says, I know your deeds. See, I have placed before you an open door that no one can shut. I know that you have little strength, yet you have kept my word and have not denied my name. That's really the key line in that reading. I know you have little strength, yet you have kept my word and not denied my name. I will make those who are of the synagogue of Satan, who claim to be Jews, though they are not, but they are liars, I will make them come and fall down at your feet and acknowledge that I have loved you. Since you have kept my command to endure patiently, I will also keep you from the hour of trial that is going to come on the whole world and test the inhabitants of the earth. He's trying to keep the command. He's enduring patiently. I see this guy as that demon-possessed man. Little strength. Keeps the word. He's not denying the Lord. It's a whole area of the world where people don't know the Lord. And so what the Lord says, what I want you to do, he says, thanks for what you've done for me. I want to come be with you. He says, no. Go back home to Decapolis, to those 10 cities, and tell the people about the Lord. Tell them what the Lord has done for you. He's trying to help spread, share the wealth. Look, I want you to go, my friends, and seek the Lord as I have, because I was insane, but I'm not anymore. And I think that's the message of this story, is that we see these patterns come in our life, we seek the Lord, and then we go out